while you're here. So I'm gonna make a cheesecake today, but before I do anything in the kitchen, I have to start by washing my hands with warm water. So I'm gonna use a little hand soap, scrub up. I like to, in my head, sing happy birthday as I wash my hands. Yeah, all right. I wanna make sure I get the tops of my hands. I wanna make sure I get the palms of my hands. And for a little extra safety, you can never be too safe and clean your hands. Your nails. Ooh, yep, they're clean. Yeah, that water gets hot. Can you see this? All right, be careful. Don't want to get too hot. All right. So you want to dry your hands with some paper towels. Okay. All right. So guys, I prepared the kitchen today by getting my pot holder ready for when we use the stove and when we use the oven. I also have a dish towel for when we wash the dishes, and I have a drying towel for when we dry the dishes. Now, you'll notice that I'm not using a sponge, and that's because sponges carry bacteria in them, and sponges aren't really safe to use. But I do have this little sponge right here, and if you notice, he's on the side of my sink, and the only thing I use him for is wiping out the inside of my sink when I clean it after I've done some sort of cooking project. But this is a sink-only sponge. All right, I'm gonna meet you guys over at the mixer, and we're gonna start on our cheesecake. Guys, we're back, and we're ready to make some cheesecake. Now, there's all sorts of different cheesecakes you can make. You can make a plain cheesecake that's just cheesecake. You can make a cheesecake with a graham cracker crumb crust. You can make a pecan crusted cheesecake. There's hundreds and hundreds of different cheesecakes, but this cheesecake comes at a special request, and we are gonna make a graham cracker crust. So I was lucky enough to find at the grocery store already ground up graham crackers. Now, if you can't find these, you can just use regular old graham crackers like what you would use to make s'mores. You put them in a food processor or a Ziploc baggie, roll them over with a rolling pin, and you, in essence, have the same thing, which are crumbs. So I've measured out 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs, and how have I measured them, you ask? Well, you are absolutely correct. I used my dry measuring cups. So the dry measuring cups, remember, are for dry measures, not liquid, dry only. And a graham cracker crumb would be something that's dry. So the first thing, according to our recipe, which I have right out here in front of us, is to mix 8 tablespoons of melted butter into the graham cracker crumbs. So I'm gonna do that. I've already melted the butter in my microwave, and I did it in a microwave safe dish, which is a Pyrex. This is microwave safe, and with butter you wanna do it nice and low and slow, like 15-second increments, just until it's melted, and then the heat of the mixture will melt it the rest of the way. So this is a liquid measuring cup, and we know that because it has a handle, it has a spout, and it has the graduated measure up the side. So 8 tablespoons of butter right in there, and then our recipe calls for 3 tablespoons brown sugar. We're using a small 1 tablespoon measuring spoon for the brown sugar, and I'm going to level it off, like you see here. I didn't even need to use a spatula because I've got the side of this handy dandy container right here. So that's 2 and 3. All right, we have that in there. And I also need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And remember, a teaspoon is marked by a little tiny T, not the large T like a tablespoon. All right, so it looks like we have a visitor today. We're going to shoo the cat off the counter because that is not food safe. All right, we have a teaspoon of cinnamon. And remember, measuring spoons are used to measure small amounts of liquid or solid. All right, we have a teaspoon of cinnamon right there. It smells delightful. Okay. And the directions say to mix it all together. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna mix it all up, and I decided to use a spatula because eventually what we need to do is we need to get this mixture into the bottom of our springform pan. And a springform pan is what you typically make a cheesecake in. And the beautiful thing about this pan, let me show you, kind of it all set and ready, is that it has this latch and it opens up. So the cheesecake is gonna set in this pan after it bakes in the oven, and then you're just gonna pull it off to the side and you'll have your cheesecake all set and ready. Now, I've already buttered the bottom of the cheesecake pan, or the springform pan, and I wrapped it in foil. And the reason you wanna do that is, occasionally a cheesecake can leak. The springform pan might not just grab it just right and it could leak, and you don't want that to leak all over your oven. So I wrapped it in foil. All right. So we're gonna put the crumbs in the bottom of this pan, and you do wanna make sure you're scraping off all the butter because it starts to solidify right away. So you just press it down. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do need to make sure you cover all the areas because you don't want one person to get a nice bite of graham cracker crumbs and the next person not to. All right. Now, this recipe tells you to put the graham cracker crumb crust into the refrigerator and let it set while you make the filling. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna let it set up in there, and that's just so that the butter can solidify and everything can get mixed together. All right, guys, so we've got the cheesecake crust in the refrigerator chilling, and now we're gonna make the filling. I'm just gonna wipe up my counter space a little because I cracked the 4 eggs, and eggs can carry bacteria like salmonella, and you wanna make sure that your surface area is clean. You wanna make sure you've washed your hands after you crack eggs and before you get ready to make anything else. We're gonna wipe up that spot where my little kitty came for a visit as well. All right, so we are set and ready to make this beautiful cheesecake. Now, I wanna tell you exactly why this cheesecake is so great. So this cheesecake is so phenomenal because it has all great ingredients in it. So a low-fat cheesecake isn't really something that I'm interested in making. If you're gonna make cheesecake, you wanna make it with all that great fat, right? And where do you find fat? Well, you find fat in cream cheese, you find fat in whole sour cream, and you find it in heavy cream. All those ingredients that you're going to find in the cheesecake we're gonna make today. So in the bowl, I've already opened up 3 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. I've measured out 1½ cups of sugar, and I measured it again using our dry measuring cups, 1½ cups right here. I've cracked 4 eggs into the bowl, and we need 16 ounces of sour cream. So I didn't measure this out because this container is 16 ounces. So 16 ounces of sour cream, like we talked about the other day in class, is 2 cups of sour cream. And again, none of this is low fat, which is what makes it so good. I've also measured out 8 ounces or 1 cup of heavy cream, and I put it in a liquid measuring cup. I've juiced 2 lemons because we need a tad of lemon juice, and I've got my pure vanilla bean extract ready to go. So the directions say that we're going to soften the cream cheese in a bowl, and we've been letting it soften for about 20 minutes now, so it should be good. We're gonna put it in our KitchenAid mixer. Now this is a KitchenAid stand mixer. I have at home, obviously. So I have this KitchenAid mixer, which is kind of a medium grade KitchenAid mixer. At school we have some that are commercial grade, which means they can really withstand some heavy duty mixing, and they have a bigger motor. But this guy right here is absolutely perfect for what we're gonna do. So we're gonna turn it on. And you can see that I chose the beater bar to beat the cream cheese with because it's kind of a heavy substance. And I'm gonna soften it up. Now the friction in the bowl is gonna soften it quicker rather than later. So we just need to let it mix up for a second. bars, scrape around the sides. And again, I'm using a spatula for that, a clean, different spatula than the crust spatula. Fluffy. So nice and slow, I'm going to gradually pour in the sugar in a slow, steady stream. You don't want to dump it in all at once, that's how you get lumps. And cream cheese is thick. And what you want to do is you want to create a nice, smooth filling for your cream cheese cake. Okay. That a second. All right, looking good in here. Looking like fluffiness. So when a recipe calls for something to look fluffy, depending on what it is, like this should look like smooth icing almost. But if you're doing something like egg whites and it says fluffy, always think about a cloud, how a cloud is big and fluffy, and it looks like you can just squeeze the air out of it. Well, that's how you want this to look. Nice and smooth, no lumps. You want it to be even in consistency. And we are ready to add the rest of our ingredients. All right, so we have the sugar, it's fluffy. Now, all the other ingredients just go in gradually. So I'm gonna add my eggs in, kind of one at a time to give them a chance to incorporate. Now, the recipe doesn't specifically say what size eggs, but anytime you are baking, you should always assume that you should be baking with large eggs, unless the recipe calls for something other than that. So I used regular, large Hanford eggs. And, all right, sour cream. All right, here we go. Now I'm gonna add in the 16 ounces or 2 cups of sour cream. I'm actually gonna turn the mixer off for a second because I'm gonna scrape it down one more time. Now this KitchenAid mixer you can use for everything. I use this KitchenAid mixer for obviously cheesecake. I use it for regular cakes, for brownies. I use it for cookie dough. I use it for mashed potatoes. You can really use it for anything. It's a multi-purpose tool in your kitchen. So these are great. If you don't have one of these at home, you could use a hand mixer. It'll just take you a little bit longer, but you could use a hand mixer and you could do it by hand if you had to. While I've got my mixer down, I'm gonna scrape in all of this sour cream. And again, 2 cups of sour cream right in there, right into the mixer. Okay, next I'm adding in heavy cream. And this is 1 cup of heavy cream. Let me pour it this way so you can see how it's nice and thick. Heavy cream has lots of fat in it, and the fat is what's going to hold together this cheesecake. Without the fat, it would be runny, and you would have something like cream cheese soup, which you don't want. You want all that goodness in your cheesecake to make it delicious. All right. The next thing we have is we're going to add in lemon juice. So 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. I squeeze these on my juicer, fresh lemons. We're just going to add in 2 teaspoons. 1 and 2. Okay. And again, we're using liquid measuring spoons to measure that. And then vanilla is our last ingredient. And the recipe calls for a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. I would like a little extra vanilla. I love the smell of vanilla, and I love how it tastes. Okay, so the recipe calls for it now to just mix until there's no lumps, until you can't see any difference, until you can't notice that the ingredients are all in there. You want it to be nice and smooth. You want it to be ready to pour into our chilled cheesecake crust. So let's take a second, we'll wait for this to mix all up, and then I'll see you again when we're ready to add it all together. All right guys, so in our KitchenAid mixer, mixer. We finished up, it took about 2 to 3 minutes, but we did mix together our cream cheese, our sour cream, our heavy cream, and now we have a nice, smooth, creamy mixture. And we're gonna pour it into our chilled crust. Look how nice and thick that is. And that's exactly how you want it to look, nice and thick. Okay, so we're gonna make sure we scrape the sides. Sometimes at the bottom of these KitchenAid mixers, where like the little lip is, sometimes things get a little stuck down there. All right. Now, again, we have our springform pan. It was greased and wrapped in aluminum foil, just in case we have any leakage. We're gonna make the top of that nice and smooth. Now, I've also put my springform pan wrapped in foil on top of a half sheet pan. Again, just in case something leaks or something spills, we don't want it to burn in the oven and cause a fire. Just a little safety tip from my house to yours. Our oven is set at 350 degrees, it's preheated, and this cheesecake is gonna take an hour in the oven. But when that timer goes off, you're not gonna take the cheesecake out. You're gonna leave it in and let it set in the oven for at least an hour. It's gonna set, you might see a little bit of crackage on the top once the cheesecake settles, but that's okay because we're gonna cover it in some ooey gooey perfectness later on. So if there's a little crack on the top, it doesn't matter. We're gonna set this in the oven. We'll set our timers for an hour. In the meantime, while the cheesecake is baking and it's cooking away, the whole house is gonna smell phenomenal. We're gonna wash up some dishes. So let me get this in the oven and then we'll talk about how to wash dishes. I'm gonna set my timer. I have to remember how to set my timer. I'm gonna set my timer for 1 hour. Okay. I'm not setting my timer for 1 hour. All right, I'm setting my timer for 1 hour. It is set. Okay, so you can tell my stove is a little bit different. I have 2 separate ovens, a top oven and a bottom oven. Each one has a separate timer, but he's in there, he's in the middle rack, that big old cheesecake. He's gonna cook for an hour and this house is gonna smell delicious. I wonder if any of my friends will be able to smell that. All right, so guys, come on over to the sink for a second. So, I just have a couple dishes to wash up, but a couple friendly reminders while you're washing your dishes, and because most of you are baking at home, you need to clean up after yourselves. This is not a mom or a dad or a grandma job. This is an all you job. So if you notice, I'm gonna rinse off my KitchenAid heater bar. I'm gonna rinse it off just because it has a lot of fat on it, right? It has that fat from the cheese, has the fat from the heavy creams. I'm just gonna rinse it off first. I apparently have set my timer wrong. I set it for 1 minute. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. My cheesecake is gonna be done at 12:10, and I'm gonna reset that in just a second. All right, so I'm using hot water, and we have exceptionally hot water in this house, and I'm gonna make sure I fill up this with hot soapy water. I'm gonna use my dish towel, and again, my sponge is here on the side, but that's only to clean my sink when I'm all done. You wanna make sure you're washing everything top to bottom. Scrub it, rinse it, and then have another place to put your clean dishes. Some sinks in a commercial kitchen might have 3 different bays in the sink. I don't have a commercial kitchen at home. I do have a very deep sink. But as long as you're using hot soapy water and you're cleaning it off, that's all that's important. All right, guys, well, I'm gonna finish up with my bowl. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed our kitchen safety tips and our cheesecake making. I'm gonna show you what the cheesecake looks like when it comes out of the oven after in about a couple hours, because remember, the cheesecake bakes for an hour, but it also sets in the oven for an hour as well. So we'll see you soon, guys. Looks like my cheesecake is done. The timer's going off. Let's see what it looks like inside. I've been anxiously awaiting this cheesecake for 2 hours. 1 hour to bake, 1 hour to cool. Looks beautiful. Here's my cheesecake. All right, now, the awesome news is this cheesecake absolutely did not leak at all. Now, the pan is still a little hot to the touch, but look at that. Didn't leak. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now, the cheesecake is done cooking, it's done cooling, but it's not done setting yet. If you notice, it's still a little hot. If you notice, it still has a little bit of jiggle to it, and that's going to continue to happen until the cheesecake is set all the way. And in order for it to set the rest of the way, it needs to go into the refrigerator for the final cooling process, if you will. So before I put any topping on it, before I cut into it or take out the springform pan, it's gonna cool in the refrigerator just like this for a few more hours. And then we'll add some toppings to it later on. All right, guys, good job. We made a beautiful cheesecake. Woohoo!